Hello, hello, it's me. It is me, finally, at last. I returned from the grave. I'll talk about that later, though. This is a video about Adult Link. Link is already an adult, you say. You're wrong. Come on, look at him. Look at that obliteratable twink. Is that a word? Obliteratable? He's very obliteratable, though. But, yeah, the general idea behind this is linked somewhat with my tales of woe that I'm going to share with you today. But the gist of it, as we get to the forefront of this video, is that things have not been going well for me at the beginning of the year, and that has resulted in me not having any internet really at all for the past 2 months or so, almost, which has made it impossible for me to upload videos or to really work at all, like no streaming or anything of that nature. So it's been a minor nightmare for me. So to that end, I have been wasting a little bit of time. I've been working, of course, in other ways, but in my spare time, I've been playing a little bit of Age of Calamity and also Hyrule Wars Definitive Edition, since I never actually got into it. So I've had Zelda on the brain as a result. So one thing that I've actually always liked the idea of, and I see it from time to time, is this rough idea of what if Link, but he was older? And you do sort of see that sometimes in the games. It seems like Link to the Past? Or Link Between Worlds, which, is kind of the same thing in a way. There was like an old man that offered you training, and it's sort of hinted that he might have been another hero of time, or he's referenced as... It's sort of a tongue-in-cheek thing where he is, but he isn't. It's one of those kind of deals. But he is very strong for an old man. He really just kicks the absolute garbage out of you. But he has like a really puffy gray beard. He's almost sort of a Santa Claus type dude. And you can look it up on Google. Do a cursory search for Old Man Link or something of that nature. You'll find a lot of images, in fact, because it's actually a very popular idea. But anytime someone does it, they always sort of go this like grizzled veteran route to the idea behind the redesign, which results in him looking like Santa Claus. And I don't think that's something that especially a Japanese developer would ever do, because, they love their twinks. So to that end, I was like, what sort of redesign would they actually use if they ever actually did this? Because most of the time, whenever Link is portrayed as being quote-unquote adult, he actually is like 16 or 15 or something, I think. It's hard to tell. Even in Ocarina of Time, I think he was not what we would consider to be an adult. He was still a kid in many ways. So to that end, I decided, what if he was like in his like 30s or so? Like he was in his prime, but he was still definitively more of an adult design. So this is what the video is actually about. So first, I will mention that in the process of doing what I'm doing here, whenever I was doing my little construction of the model, I have this approach whenever I'm drawing in my head, I call it draw what you know. And to me, what that means in my head, for my head identity, for my brain, is I draw the parts of the body that I absolutely know the location of. Like, I know this is exactly where I want it to be, right here. Or I know for a fact that this part of the body will absolutely look like this. So I will sort of create a rough outline. That's what I did at the very beginning. I created this really rough idea of the body will probably be sort of like in this area, this sort of general shape. I should have made the hair longer. Sorry. And then after that, I will start attaching things to it, or shaping out the body in a way that I know for a fact, oh, the arm will be in this position absolutely, 100%. And then I'll try to make sense of that by sort of in-betweening the areas of the body in a way that causes them to fuse together into an abomination against the Lord. And that's sort of what I'm doing now. Here you could see that I created a general idea of what I wanted the body to be like. And then after that, once I figured out, oh, I want it to sort of look like this. Like I had the idea of... I'll go ahead and tell you now, the end result of this drawing is good, in my opinion. Good enough. It is the most me style that I can probably draw. Because back in high school, the only thing I really ever did was I drew on my little notebook paper guys in armor. I never actually drew women. I think I mentioned this before, but I never drew women back in high school. That's like a very recent thing for me, after marketing kicked in. So I actually primarily drew things like this, just guys in armor or in cool designs that were sort of just standing there. In a way that allowed me to draw all the details of their character designs. That's the thing I enjoyed doing most of all. So, to that end, also with the line work is very stereotypical of me. The coloring is very straightforward, nothing too fancy about it. Everything about this drawing ends up being the most Plague of Gripes on brand in terms of how I draw characters that it could ever be. So this is like... I remember I was talking about masterpieces, I think in my prior video. I can't remember when I was talking about it. It's been so long now. But the general idea that... And by the way, I did think I remember seeing a few people mention this. But it's something I didn't mention in that video, whatever it was. I don't even remember. Is that masterworks were a way for artists to sort of showcase themselves. But the rule of them being like a masterpiece or a masterwork being something that is wholly indicative of every element of how that artist constructs whatever it is that they do. Like one thing will look like... One thing will have this characteristic, another painting will have this other characteristic. A masterpiece will be something that's like, this is everything I do. So if it was an intentional or not... It doesn't really matter. That's still what a masterpiece actually is. It's not just good drawing. It's literally a masterpiece, like a master key, that is a way of looking at every element of how that artist works. So I guess this would be considered, in some ways, be considered to be a masterpiece in that sense. Only in the technical sense. It's not an amazing masterpiece in a modern sense drawing or anything. But in the sense of it just being all my characteristics, there you go. So, in terms of line work and coloring and everything, all of it is definitely just me. Because coming out of all the garbage I've been having to deal with lately, I wanted to draw something that was exclusively for me and no one else. I didn't want to have to deal with other styles. I didn't want to have to deal with working with a design I didn't like or anything like that. So, even though this is referencing Link from Zelda, this is still more or less how I like to design characters. And here I'm cheating. Look at me cheating. Sometimes people ask me questions about this sort of stuff, and I like having this sentiment with other artists too, of saying the job of an artist is to cheat and then not let anyone know about it. But that is a good general rule. That's just how you work as an artist. You like heavily use reference materials. Never do this. Some people quote this, and I can't remember what my own quote was anymore. But it was my general sentiment of people that don't have any experience actually working as an artist have this fraudulent notion that you should never look at reference materials. You should especially never, like, do what I just did and not exactly trace, but, just guideline the entire image. you should always draw things from memory, but while you're drawing, you should never actually look at them. Like, it's some sort of insane rule that makes no sense, but it's something that you see a lot with kids that have no actual experience drawing. But whenever they see artists, quote-unquote, cheating by doing things that, of course, they would do because it's their job to do them, then it greatly upsets people that have no experience in the field. So it's some crazy thing like that. So cheat. Just cheat like a madman. You should never stop cheating. Always cheat. So anyway, sorry. So whenever I'm doing my construction, whenever I'm doing model construction, I do that sort of attachment thing where I draw things that I more or less know exactly this is where it will be. And then whenever I'm done with that, I shore everything up. And you notice at this point, I've gotten through the model enough that I have all the shapes down, and I'm just sort of going back over with a tertiary primary, where the first primary is just blobs. It sort of is the same way that people paint. Like, I'm not a painter, I can't paint worth diddly squat. But as I'm painting, as I'm drawing and as people are painting, they'll first lay down just a blob of shapes that don't mean anything, but they sort of know, it'll sort of go in this region. And the same thing works with primaries whenever you're doing line work. And once you figure out, I want things to be here, then you go back over with a secondary pass where you sort of shore it up. And instead of it just being a blob, it's sort of a shaped blob where it forms this approximation of what a realistic form would do. So in the case of this drawing, my second pass was taking my blobby shape of a person sort of standing there and trying to shift its weight and movement around so it actually looked like it was walking, and doing so in a realistic human way. But it still didn't look like a human being because it's still just a bunch of blobs. So on my third pass, which is what this is, even though technically this is probably like pass number 8 or something, that's one of those draw the rest of the fucking owl sort of things that I've joked about in the past. You don't see all the intermediary steps, so whenever you get to step 4 and it just appears, the owl just appears, it's because it was the result of hundreds of micro steps that there's no way of really depicting, so that's the reason why that happens. But this, my quote-unquote third pass, is just taking that second pass and working over it in a way where I'm trying to redraw the entire shape, but not with more details necessarily, but actually, you know how I said I draw what I know, where I know for a fact that this thing needs to be here? In this case, I'm trying to draw what I know in the sense of, I know for a fact that the arm, since I finalized the general shape of my blobby second pass, I know the arm will go here, the elbow is absolutely here, the wrist is absolutely here, and so I'm just sort of working towards those goalposts and shaping my little micro shapes that are sitting in the middle of all those little intermediary passes. It's like doing animation. You're doing in-betweens, essentially. But I'll draw like the sleeves, and that'll be like a little bitty micro shape that's in the middle of the more basic shape of the upper arm and the lower arm. And that's just how you construct models in general, is you establish this will go here, and it's a big general shape. And then you look at what's inside of that general shape, and you know, well, I know that it's this long, absolutely, this will not change. And once you've established what that hard rule is, then you establish a smaller rule, a smaller shape, a smaller way of looking at the picture in between. It just takes time. It's a slow process, especially when you're working the way that I do. But it ends up paying off as long as you are making good judgment calls one after the other. And that's where most of the problem comes in, because if you do that and you discover once you have drawn enough of the image that, oh, it doesn't look right, I don't know what went wrong, then obviously you made a bad judgment call at some point, and avoiding that just comes with experience. So I can't promise that's good advice for a beginner, because whenever you are doing that, it absolutely is not going to work out, and there's nothing wrong with that. Whenever you fail, I'm not going to give you a generic thing like failure is just a step to getting stronger, just something like that, but it's very natural to fail, don't worry about it. If you find yourself drawing something and then you just have to stop because you get really frustrated and angry at the picture because it's not coming out the way that you want, I still do that. It's incredibly natural. Don't worry about it. Like, that never quite goes away completely. So if you find yourself drawing something and you're like, it doesn't look like this, Plague's a masterpiece maker. And you're like, where's my masterpiece, man? If you're doing that, then rest assured that I make lots of crap that you don't see. So don't worry too much about that. It still happens. Just keep working at it. It eventually does sort of mesh. As I've said before, sometimes it just comes down to whether you wake up that day and you're feeling just right. I've talked enough about that, about how chemically some days you can wake up and you're just not all there. You can't quite think straight. You don't find the words. You don't find the good words that you normally would find. That sort of deal. Not that that's happening to me right now. But as a result of that, you end up not on your best footing to draw the picture that you want to draw. So whenever you're constructing, like if you try to draw a circle one day, not that many people can draw a perfect circle, but maybe you're fairly okay at drawing sort of a loose circle and you have to shore it up, which is usually how I am. There's some days I wake up and I try to draw a circle or whatever, and it's no part of it's happening. I'll end up drawing just like a line that has like a loop on the end or something. It makes no sense because my body's just not really working to its fullest that day. And that can come down to you didn't sleep right, or you haven't been eating the correct things, or whatever. There's a million things, because your body is a mechanism, and you have to actually repair it and take care of it. And if you don't, or even if you try and it's just not up to task that particular day, then it's not going to be hitting. You won't be hitting on all cylinders. It just won't be good enough. And again, there's nothing really wrong with that. It's not your personal failing. It's just a reality of the fact that we are biological machines. So don't worry about it. Don't blame yourself about things like that. Okay. So, as a result of doing all these little bitty micro steps, whenever you see the screen darken like that, is because I'm taking a screenshot using the Windows key, Shift, and S at the same time, if you did not know that that was a thing. And here, this is my quote-unquote fourth pass, which means that it's more like my 30th pass or something. My third general pass. And this is what I would consider to be the final line work. And if you don't know this about me, I love keeping my primary. So I'll be keeping that third pass, which I consider to be my real primary. I don't use the other ones because they're just blobs of scratchiness. And also I do a little bit of cross-hatching because that's another thing that I like to do. But I usually don't do it too much. But I do like to use it. So it'll show up here and there. I really should have drawn that hair a little bit longer. It's already fairly long, but just a little bit more. Oh well. Anyways. So you get the idea of the general look that I was going for with this particular kind of link. I got some feedback of, let's see, various people said various things about this. People mentioned Assassin's Creed, of course, just because hoods, like someone wearing a hood just automatically means Assassin's Creed these days. Oh, I need that information, I forgot. Also, Men in Tights, what's his name? Whoever played Robin Hood in that. Also, don't mind me, just looking for something on my phone. Because I had it pulled up and I forgot to display it on my other tab. So as a result, I've mentioned this before, HitFilm Express is a fairly good free thing to use as far as video editing goes. But whenever you're previewing like this and you're doing audio recordings, if you're previewing a video and then you click anywhere at all outside of the frame or just in the frame, like if you do anything at all besides move your mouse a little bit, then it stops the playback and it completely ruins the video. So I can't interact with my computer in any way. So that's the reason why I'm having to do this weird thing that I'm doing here. But let's see, what was another thing? But the general look that I was sort of going for was this sort of, it's almost sort of the thing I think about when I look at Pirates of the Caribbean movies too, is what was his name? I can't remember the character's name, but like the lead guy that isn't Jack Sparrow, of course. Even Jack Sparrow sort of has this look, but this sort of scraggly beard that would be grown by someone that isn't really capable of growing a quote-unquote real beard. Like my actual beard in real life is a handful. There's a lot going on there. I actually shaved before I got started today just because it was getting so huge after just 1 week of having not shaved that it was becoming caveman-like, and at that point it gets really itchy and kind of starts driving me crazy. But I was going for that look. The sort of the era look of someone that is in their prime, but is still sort of well-kept and very handsome-looking. Dashing, you might say. And can't grow an amazing beard otherwise. Like Link, that's one of my problems with the Old Man Link variants that people like to do, is that they always portray him as being Santa Claus when there's no way. I mean, Link, come on, it's Link. There's no way he could grow a beard. What are you talking about? He could grow like this, and then that's pretty much it. But one of the things that I was doing with... No, not that. Damn it, I had it, and then I didn't have it. I'm almost tempted to stop the recording just so I can have the actual name of this thing. But whenever I was doing the hood, I didn't want it to just be a hood, because I wanted to get as close to his actual green tunic look as I could without it being that, because I didn't want it to just be... I didn't want it to be the old design, I didn't want it to be the new design in Breath of the Wild, where he's just wearing nothing on his head. Damn it, I cannot find it. But the weird, like, old-style flappy cone thing that he wears on the back of his head in most of the other games, there's a specific name for it. It is not a chaperone. It starts with an L, I'm pretty sure. And I had this, I was talking about it yesterday, and it drives me crazy that I don't know this. Medieval cap called... No, not chaperone again. I don't know. Drives me crazy. But the nice thing about it... Do I dare? I can't... Ugh, so annoying. It's on my computer. I'm, like, looking at it. Hold on. I'm just gonna try to do this very quickly. This is gonna make it be slightly out of sync. But I'll just have to deal with it. Because I absolutely want to know what this is. And I closed the tab. Cool! So I went through all that trouble for nothing. Anyways, it's a cat that's called something. I'm pretty sure it starts with an L, for God's sakes. This is the problem I have. I wish that my memory is better so I could just remember things. Anyways, the entire point of this cap was that it is something that is historically used because it is incredibly versatile. Whatever it's called, yet again, it has many names, but it is just a cap that has that itty-bitty little sort of cone to it on the back, the little floppy cone that you're used to seeing. On Link, whenever they got to, like, Ocarina of Time, they made it extremely long because I guess they thought it looked cooler. The actual cap was never actually that long. It was probably like a foot, I guess, about the size of your hand, and that's about it. But a lot of them had this really long stringy bit that came off the back. And that bit could be used for a lot of different things. And also the hat itself often came with a hood, and you would pull the whole thing over your head and it would rest on your shoulders. And that's sort of what inspired this sort of hood redesign that I was going for. It just looks like an ordinary hood, and that's also sort of what I was going for. But again, whatever this damn thing is called, which greatly frustrates me because I really want to communicate this so you can look it up. Someone in the comments just think, you do it. But whatever this thing is called, you would use that little string in the back for either like tying up the top of the cap like a bandana. You could use it to, of course, you could use it like hold something. Like if you needed to hold something on the back of your head or something, you could use it that fashion as well. You could take off the cap and invert it and roll it up and use it as like an ordinary hat that just rests on your head. You could use that thing on the back and wrap it around your neck as a scarf, depending on what it looked like, what its thickness was, etc. You could also like invert it and turn it sideways. This will make no sense. You have to like watch a video of someone doing it. But these things stuck around a long time because they were just incredibly versatile hats. They could be used for like working. They could be used for like they were used by the nobility. I was trying to rephrase that correctly. Or, you know, just for anything. They were just a very solid multi-purpose hat that just eventually fell out of fashion, but otherwise were incredibly good utility hats that just stuck around for generations and generations. They had all sorts of different names, all sorts of different styles, but the reason why that Link was wearing it is because he was supposed to be like that sort of old-fashioned, medieval-looking dude. So if you ever wondered about that, it's like, oh, it's a fairy cap. No, it's not a fairy cap. It was something that was used historically for centuries upon centuries. And we just don't have a modern equivalent for it really anymore, besides like a hoodie, I guess. But here, the thing that I drew, I wanted that hood to look like it also was part of the mantle that he's wearing on his shoulders, and have it wrap around and form a scarf. Because the other thing that I was going for is I wanted this to sort of be the best possible version of every costume that he's ever had. So I wanted it to sort of look like it was from Breath of the Wild, and have a modern, more sensible looking update to the character design. I wanted it to look like his old green tunic in a way, so I wanted to harken back to that as well. And I also wanted it to look like the Hyrule Warriors version, where it was sort of updated to be more stylish, because that's what they were actually. They didn't go the they didn't go to the Breath of the Wild route where they completely dropped the design entirely. They were trying to update the design so that he didn't look quite as ridiculous as he used to. And by the way, thank God that they have reached this era internally where a lot of younger people are handling the projects now, and they have this approach of, why did we do this? They've stated this in interviews. I can't remember his name, the lead developer, even though as famous as he is. I feel ridiculous for that. And he said, a lot of the younger people said, why are we doing this? And his only response could be, well, I don't know. It's just always been that way. And this was during the development of Breath of the Wild. And he said this, a part of the reason why the game is so different from the prior installments is just because I realized that we've been doing all these iterations on the exact same thing for years for really no reason other than it's just always been that way. And I think the design is also part of that. So I'm really glad that they went with this blue design, even if you don't like the blue, because I'm really glad that there is precedent for them not using something that is traditional. I don't know if I ever have communicated this about myself. I hate tradition. Like things that are the way that they are forever just because that's the way that they were initially. I guess I don't think of myself as a trendsetter or anything like that. I'm not that much of an asshole. But I do think of myself in terms of I like to make things and I like to make things new. I like to try to iterate on ideas and change them in a way that still fits their requirements without being... Like, I am a fairly conservative person. I'm a very cautious person by nature. I'm very liberal in some ways. I'm very conservative in others. I'm very complicated. No, but there is sort of a weird thing going on with me in that regard. So when it comes to designs and just pushing the envelope and things like that, I can be conservative, but I can also be really, really aggressively liberal with the general premise. It just depends on thing to thing, whatever it is. Here we go with the color. So whenever it comes to tradition, that's what I was talking about. Whenever it comes to tradition, it really gripes my butt whenever people say, well, that's not the way it's always been, and then that's their entire reason for why we shouldn't change something. Because it's just always been bad, so let's never change it. And I'm sure you can think of many video game examples of that, where you suggest something like a major change that would drastically improve something. Like I've been playing... Yesterday I played nothing but Dead by Daylight. Like, that's the only thing I did because I have not had internet for a very long time, so I haven't been able to do anything multiplayer related for like a month and a half or 2 months or however long it's been. I could sort of log in briefly to... I'll talk about it later, I guess, if I have time. But I was able to do things like I could log into the game very, very briefly, just enough time to like input a code for free points or something, before it would go, you're not connected to the internet. It would kick me back to the main menu. And I would actually have to do it very quickly, like in the span of like 30 seconds, because the internet was doing things like disconnecting every 5 seconds. And it would have to reestablish the connection constantly. So it's been a nightmare without going all into it. But anyways, as a result, I've been playing Dead by Daylight yesterday, and I'll probably play it after this, just because I really need to cool off for a while. But before that, like a few months ago, I was also playing it quite a bit with like Paige and so on. So as a result, by the way, this thing on his scarf, I'm pulling directly from Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. So whatever the hell this means, that's what I'm using. I just wanted it to harken back to that. So, one of the problems that Dead by Daylight has is that it was initially not designed very well, so it has weird problems like tunneling, where the objective of the game is there are 4 survivors and there's 1 killer. One team against another team. 1 player versus 4 players. And it's pretty common for especially newer killers to down a survivor and then put them on a hook, which is what you have to do. You have to hook them 3 times and that kills them. There's more to it, but I'm not going to go into it. So a lot of newer players will just down one person and then just stand in front of them. They'll put them on the hook and they'll just stand there and look at them. Because none of the other survivors can come get them and take them off the hook. And technically the person that's on the hook has like a 4 or 2% chance of getting... Yeah, I think it's 4. 4% chance of getting themselves off the hook, and they can attempt that, I think, 3 times max. It almost never works for obvious reasons. But even if they do, then the killer is right there, and they would just grab them again and put them right back on, and that would make it that much worse. So that's sort of a minor/major problem with the design of the game. And the developers have tried to rectify this in various ways, and most of it just comes down to making perks and trying to encourage them to be meta perks or avoid being meta perks, or trying to counter other perks that make it easier for people to tunnel, or just so forth and so on. Like Decisive Strike was supposed to be an anti-tunneling perk. But the actual problem is that the design of the game is not great. The actual solution would be something... I've mentioned this on one of Paige's streams recently, actually. My idea was, once you put someone on the hook like wobbles menacingly and like goes into the ground or something, like you're being pulled into the earth, at which point you get taken to sort of a basement level that's under every map. That way the killer cannot access that person anymore. But in order to try to stop survivors from rescuing them, there are like doorways or hatches that are all across the map, and the killer can know that the survivors need to get to one of those in order to get under the map in order to rescue the guy. So you can still stop them in that way. I'm not going to go into all this nonsense, but the point being is that you can fix the problem by not being so traditional. Like, this is the way the game works, we can't change it. But my argument has always been, well, the game has an inherent flaw with how it's designed. You are not going to fix it by introducing more perks or anything like that. You can't pussyfoot with some elements of design. You have to stop being traditional and admit there's a intrinsic fatal flaw with how this game was designed. We need to fix it. And that would be resolved if you just were not traditional. Anyways, that was a rabbit and a half I chased. Point being is that whenever I'm doing redesigns like this, I do appreciate some elements of traditionalism, but I despise people that are traditional just for the hell of being traditional. That's one of my biggest irritations whenever dealing with talking about fixing problems of any kind. Usually it comes in the form of video games whenever you're talking about stuff online. But anytime someone is just like, well, it's just always been that way, we can't change it, then the game would just not be itself. Fuck that. Like, fuck that absolutely. I hate that mentality. Same thing in regards to changing designs. Why does Link always look like a tool? Why is he always either a baby or he's like a 14-year-old boy, like a mincing 4-foot, 10-inch man-child that wears green? And the answer is, well, this is just how it is. It's always been that way. We can't change it, then he wouldn't be himself. Fuck that. Fuck that. So anyways, that's my general approach to things. So to that end, the entire point of me trying to do this quote-unquote redesign is to try to unify all those problems. I'm glad that Breath of the Wild made him blue, just because it establishes a precedent that he does not have to be green unless you absolutely want him to be green. Also, it established that he can wear other things, and that can be his main outfit now. It's not a big deal. But also, I do like the fact that he can be green. I don't want him to just be blue exclusively from this point forward. So I wanted the design to be something where I was pointing out, hey, he can be other things, but he can also be what you consider to be traditional. It can be all those things at the same time. So, that's what I was doing, so I hope that makes sense. Okay. Briefly, I'll talk about some of the woes in my life, just for the hell of it. Part of the reason why I have not been able to release any content lately, and this has really been driving me crazy, is because of the internet. It's basically, since it hit spring and summer, I noticed that I was having connection issues, which was preventing me from doing any reliable streaming for about the past half year, and I wasn't quite sure why. Because it was very inconsistent. Some days it would be great, sometimes it would be bad. I thought it was the ISP. It turns out this showed up more in the spring because trees started growing. And, oh, by the way, I was at some point, I was shopping on Twitter the idea of should he be blue or should he be green? And I went on Twitch and did a short, like, 1.5 hour stream where I just did a bunch of variations of him in a blue tunic or a green tunic, or even like brown or like a gray or so on, and just exploring different ideas. And I did like 3 different polls where I said, which one of these looks best to you guys? And eventually it was decided that the best approach was for him to sort of have the same... there's a set in Breath of the Wild called the Hylian set, and it is essentially this, in a way. I don't remember if the default color on it is green. I don't think it is. Maybe it is. I can't remember. But it's pretty common for most players to actually wear this outfit and to wear the hood. And they always leave the hood as its default sort of dark blue color, and then they always color the tunic green. So this is actually probably the most common thing that you'll see people wear in Breath of the Wild. And it just so happened to work out that way, which is kind of interesting. I wasn't going to be different for the sake of being different or anything, but it also was advantageous because it helped sell that idea that he can be different while not being too different. Anyways. Point being is the color is not only the result of me deciding this looks best, it is also the result of everyone on Twitter and everyone in the polls, and even Wooly chimed in. Good for you, Wooly. Good for you. Thank you, Wooly, is what I should say. Sorry about your back, buddy. He laughed really hard at Disco Elysium. That caused it. It's a result of everyone agreeing, yes, this is the thing we like the most. There was a really hard divide, 50-50, between people that preferred blue or green, and lots of people provided different answers, so I hope it's not too contentious. I think this is probably the best intermediate sort of approach that I could take for it. Anyway, sorry. But trees started growing up around... Since there's no cable here, there's nothing like that. There's certainly no fiber. So as a result, I have to use wireless internet. Like I use a dish that points to another dish that points to another dish. It's basically just a giant router. So trees started growing up and were actually blocking the physical view of the dish. And that's the reason why the signal kept going in and out and why it had been slowly getting worse over time. So, as a result, my life became a nightmare for about 2 months, where the ISP were like, we can't do anything for obvious reasons. You either have to you either have to move, you have to cut down those trees, or, it's whatever. So I started exploring every possible option. I got a guy out here to look at the yard to determine how much it would cost to trim things back or to cut down the trees. And unfortunately, a very major storm hit the area fairly recently. And as a result, it knocked down a huge amount of trees because of the sheer wind force. A few mini tornadoes sort of hit the area. A lot of houses got knocked in, things falling on them, etc. So as a result, they were overloaded with work, and he said, there's no way that I can do this unless it costs enough, and he basically said, unless this is going to cost like $2,000 or something, there's no way I can afford to come out here when so many other things are happening. So I thought, okay, I can't really do that. Especially since, in theory, we're supposed to be getting fiber anytime between half a year from now or 2 years from now. I don't know. The storms also pushed them back, so the people that are doing the deployment for our fiber, I got a hold of the vice president in charge of the company who handles the business accounts, and I talked to him about getting early installs, and he basically... Really, it's because I'm not an important politician from the area, because there's actually a building that's like a mile from here, or a mile and a half, that does have their internet service via fiber, and it's because a big hot shot in the area, I think it's like a district attorney or something, goes to that church. And he pulled strings, and now that church has fiber internet for God knows what reason. They don't need it, but they have it. So I said, can we get it run from there to here? And he said, no. It took a while to get a hold of him because he doesn't bother responding to he doesn't answer his phone and he doesn't respond to emails, not unless you're famous or something. So it took forever to get a hold of him. I basically had to make a bunch of phone calls to other people that were like politically linked with them. And it makes me tired just thinking about it. It took weeks to do all this. And I basically just had to make his life sort of more of a problem just to get him to respond to me. And eventually he's like, okay, the way that our deployment works, we can't actually go in that direction. It has to go like west to east, not east to west. And even then, you're technically like 0.2 miles over the area that we normally would run line to. So as a result, you're just in the same boat as everyone else. It doesn't matter if you want a business account or not. We can't help you. So I'm stuck just not doing that for a while. I got in contact with like AT&T Wireless because they also offer wireless. Got into a big hoodoo with that because no one I talked to even knew that they offered wireless for some reason. They all thought I was talking about their fiber that is technically available in very small areas. I talked to them for a while, then because of the fact that it was tied to our cell phone package, they wanted to know what the PIN number was, and then as a result, I had to like get a hold of my parents, and they didn't know. As a result, we ended up trying it too many times, and it locked us out of the system, and it turned out my brother was the one that had the PIN number for some reason. I don't know why. He's the one that does changes to the plan, so I guess that's why. So that locked us out of that avenue, and I looked up later, and it turned out we probably don't get service here anyways because of some sort of weird zoning thing. So as a result, the only thing that I could really do was go house shopping. So I started going house shopping, which was very difficult because the internet did not work. So whenever I went on like Zillow or Realtor or something, anytime I would start shopping for houses, it would not load the images, it would not load the full page, you would have to refresh the page constantly, and even then sometimes it would just go out for like 20 minutes at a time. It was more common for it to go out like every few seconds. So it took a long time to do that. Plus the internet in this area is not good anyways, so I was having to use broadband.fcc.gov, which is the government's like sector by sector, county by county area that defines what internet is available where. Use that, by the way. If you don't know about that, just go use it and just see what is available in your area. Broadband.fcc.gov. I started using that to cross-reference what was available in terms of housing, in terms of what is available in terms of internet. End result is there are co-ops in the area that are not like true fiber, they're cooperatives. And most of that is where most people get their fiber in this area. But apparently it's not very good sometimes. I don't know anyone that has it, so that became a problem. AT&T does offer fiber, but only in like very, very specific areas that are like a block of a specific town, and I don't know why. I couldn't get an answer about that. And sometimes even the site doesn't report it correctly because the latest update was like from June of 2020, so it's out of date slightly. And the deployment zones of the ISP that I was talking to that's deploying fiber here, in theory, are also out of date because they've been going so quickly. They're hanging as opposed to digging their fiber. And some of the areas are available, but whenever you actually input your address into into their site, you'll get different reports, and the people that you call and ask about it they are not sure why there's a distinction because their reports are also out of date. It's been such a nightmare. So I was just going house shopping for a long time. I was like driving out in the middle of the night to try to visit houses just to see what they look like. And of course the housing market right now is terrible. If you don't know what's going on because of the pandemic and everything else, it has had this weird result of the same sort of housing crisis that was happening in the early 2000s that resulted in the Great Recession is happening again because the US government doesn't like to punish rich people. So as a result, they're just doing the same shit that they always do, which has resulted in a lot of rich people buying up all the houses in this area and then greatly overpricing them. So houses that should be like $35,000 are now like $75,000. Houses that should be $100,000 are now like $300,000 in some cases. It's insane, especially for this area where no one is rich. Everyone is dirt poor. There's nothing going on here. There's no reason to be doing it in this area, but they're still doing it. So everything is really overpriced anyways. Plus, there might be a financial crisis in the future because as a result of the whole pandemic thing, the dollar is becoming grossly inflated, especially since there's no point going into all this, but the point being is that if you want to buy a house right now, it is insanely overpriced to do so, and it is extremely risky because if you're like me and you don't have that much money in the first place, not that I'm not like operating on nickels and dimes or anything, but still, I don't have that much. Then if I were to buy a house, it would basically just eat up my entire life savings, even if I were to pay monthly increments. And also, it would result in maybe the dollar collapsing. I don't know what's going to happen. Economic theorists don't even understand what's happening because nothing like this has ever happened. We've actually clipped our own GDP, and that should have resulted in a collapse, but it's not. And economicists don't really understand why. And it might be the result of it being some sort of a new financial era that can only happen when technology is at a certain blah blah blah. I researched it and everything. It's a mess. If you can't tell, I put a lot of thought into all this. It's been a big problem, and it never really got solved. But basically, it's just not a good idea for me to try to do all this house nonsense right now. But I eventually happened upon this idea of, you know what? The tower that we have that is above the tree line, it has a tree line growing up around it. But what if I put another unrelated dish on this building that is technically on our property? We built a barn. It would take a lot of wire to run it from there to the house. But what if we mounted it there and pointed it at a completely different tower? So that's what I had them do, but then the guy that was supposed to do it kept flaking over and over again. It took 2 weeks for him to finally get down here, and I actually had to call up the... I've become very familiar with the people that work at this ISP because it's not only 5 or something people work there or something crazy. They're probably going to be out of business in the next few years because of this whole fiber thing. Got a hold of them and basically threatened to just end everything. Just not end everything, but to put a stop to internet service, in other words, entirely, which is a big problem for them because they pay a lot of money. I'm not going to tell you how much, but I pay way too much for what I get. Which, fortunately, I only do because I can write it off and because I absolutely need it in order to make a career at all. So eventually they were like, okay, we're going to have you're going to lose your job if you don't do this today sort of discussion, which eventually got him out here. Got a better signal technically looking at the same tower that we're using now as opposed to the new one. It's still going through a tree, which I might have to cut down, which has resulted in my connection being slightly worse. But we got it installed, and the internet is now sort of working. Which means I can finally work again. But in between of that time, I have started... This is another thing. If you remember, I was doing a Star Wars animation thing, and that I started doing that right before the COVID shit started happening. And that became a nightmare because the script and the audio for it that I finally put out is 15 minutes long. It was going to be the biggest animation project that I have ever done. That was not a good time for that to happen. Because that basically destroyed all of 2020 and 2021 so far. It's just become a nightmare, so I decided to just put that Star Wars thing on pause because it has been destroying my life and my ability to do any work. Especially in between all the other stuff that I've been having to deal with lately. So as a result, I started a new animation project, which I briefly showed off on that stream. That's the reason why you briefly saw it pop up there, because I was actually recording that while I was streaming. That one is only 3 minutes long, so it should not take anywhere near as long. I'm almost done with the primary on that one, thank God. So hopefully I will be done with that soon. I don't know, maybe. I'm trying to get going, but there's still a lot of stuff happening in my personal life right now that is really causing a lot of complications. It's not fun. Maybe I'll get it done soon. If you can't tell, I'm mentally exhausted. In addition to that, like, there's also been like some other personal things I can't talk about on here that resulted in me having to like handle a couple of other like people's lives at the same time, in addition to my parents having like medical issues. It's just been a whole thing. But thankfully things are looking a bit more up. Although today I woke up and like yesterday I was like going to get food, and my family all lives like in the same general area, and I caught my dad like trying to work on a ladder, like a rickety old ladder, by himself with no one around. Like he almost fell off it at one point. Like the way he was working, he easily could have fallen and like had a fence pierce his body. So I had to like put everything on hold, and not that it matters, but basically that's one of my other responsibilities, is making sure that my parents don't kill themselves, because they are very poor. They will never call an ambulance because this is America. If anything ever goes wrong with them, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like there's no way for me to like transport their bodies or anything. I would actually have to like call up neighbors to try to get them into a car. And there's no hospitals in the area, so I'd have to drive them at least, bare minimum, like 40 minutes, up to an hour. It just depends. The good hospital is more than an hour away. But anyways, point being, I went to sleep today thinking I'm gonna wake up and he's gonna have done some stupid shit where he's trying to work and he shouldn't be working, and he'll have fallen off and broken his neck or something. Or he'll have fallen off and that fence would have pierced his body and no one was there to check on him. But I did wake up this morning and it turned out that this is a horror story. You don't have to listen to this. It turned out that one of our dogs had... he likes to run around the yard because his whole life is just barking at animals and trying to kill squirrels and stuff. And he apparently was running around so quickly that we have this sort of mesh fence that didn't have the ends capped. He ran headlong into it at full speed, and it like pierced through his skull into his brain. So, like, right now we have a dog that's lying outside. He's probably still alive at this point, I don't know. He was getting cold whenever I last checked on him. I think he's like brain dead. I don't know what's going on. But anyways, his point being, there's been a lot of shit going on. It's just been one thing after another. I've been really worried about a lot of things. It's just been really a problem lately. So, as a result, just thank you for being extremely cooperative with me. I've been really worried about not being active on YouTube and not uploading enough content and not being able to stream. That's really been driving me crazy. It's just the fact that I haven't been able to do anything, and it's just been completely out of my hands. So it's nice to finally be able to keep working again. But again, thank you for your patience. There's no reason why you should have to keep worrying about that, and especially donating to my Patreon for someone that's not working at all effectively. But in addition to the animation, I've also scripted out some videos that I was planning to do anyways that I couldn't do because the games that I was going to talk about I couldn't download because even Steam would not open. Like, the connection would be resetting so frequently, and it loses like 95%. It was losing 95% of its packets. So that's effectively the internet doesn't work, but it does. And the ISP for a while was pointing at, well, your internet's working, you can watch YouTube. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's because it buffers. It's retrying the packet so often that eventually it works. And anyways, but I've been working on scripts for new videos as well. Maybe I'll try to get Greg to help me with it. It's supposed to be little gripes, but I don't know if I'm going to have time. I really need to work on things quickly, and I really feel pressed for time right now. Like, I haven't really uploaded a major project in a long time. It feels like to me, and I know you guys are way more patient than I am. I feel like if I haven't worked in like a week, then the world is ending. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. Here we go. Final drawing. But hopefully I'll have new videos out for you guys soon, and hopefully I'll also have a new animation out somewhat soon. I don't know. Assuming nothing else major goes wrong, I feel like my life is stabilizing a little bit more recently. Hopefully nothing else major bad happens this year. The past 2 years have just been a nightmare for everyone, including me, for different reasons. I hope all you guys are getting through this okay. I hope your lives are also improving to some degree. Hope you enjoyed this picture. By the way, I didn't talk about it, but I had this little idea in my head whenever I was drawing this link. I was like, what if I could make my own story for a game? And I thought, what would be cool? And I thought it would be neat if they, even though I didn't like Skyward Sword, it'd be neat if they did this thing where, whenever Breath of the Wild 2 got announced and they showed the trailer, they had Hot Ganon that people were drawing, where that became like a minor meme for a while, where he was like buddy-buddy with Zelda and Link for whatever reason, but he was also like really hot. But anyway, that sort of gave me this idea of, what if you had the story of you bring back Girahim and Demise, but you redesign them to not, well, Demise specifically, Girahim's fine. You redesign Demise, and he becomes sort of the new villain, and the entire premise is that Zelda happens upon this idea of, what if we can remove the curse from Ganon, and that might actually stop this reincarnation cycle that we're all going through, and maybe that'll put an end to all this entirely. So they remove, Demise's curse from Ganon, but this results in Demise, remanifesting, but it also results in Ganon sort of having this moment of clarity, and actually becoming like his own character that isn't obsessed with power, because he's no longer infected with Demise. And this might sound stupid and cringy, but I was having fun thinking about it. And he has this idea, and he becomes like a true ruler for the, or he wants to be a true ruler for the Gerudo, or the Gerudo, whatever they're called. As a result, it results in this sort of team up where, they actually lose the power of the Triforce, and there's nothing special about them anymore. Zelda doesn't have her powers, Link doesn't have his powers, but they're all older, and that's where this design comes in. And they're having to fight alongside Ganon, and they're using more conventional magic and stuff that everyone has access to. And they have to use that in order to fight Demise and Girahim. And you could even bring back Fi and say, and you could fix her design and her character by saying, did you ever notice that Girahim has this sort of humanoid form, but he also has his more Fi resembling form and his sword form and all that other stuff. And you could say Fi was incomplete in some way, and then you could use that plot to sort of redesign her and give her more of a character and make her a little bit more like Girahim in the sense that she's more flamboyant now, and her whole singing thing actually makes more sense now because she is musical and flamboyant and more of a boss girl as opposed to just being a weird screaming robot that makes uncomfortable harp music tracks. And of course the final bit is them actually defeating Demise in some way, but it resulting in him still continuing to reincarnate, or it resulting in a body double of Ganon, so you actually do get still reincarnating sequels for Zelda, Link, and Ganon, but you also get another version of Ganon that is more Demise and more piggy in a sense. Anyways, this is all the stuff that I was thinking about. It's very stupid, very cringy. Don't mind me. I was just having fun thinking about it. Hope you guys enjoyed the drawing. Thank you for bearing with me. I hope to see you guys soon. I hope this video does some numbers. I think about including the word art gripe in the video's titles again, because in the past I felt like the algorithm was working against me and going, oh, art gripe, no one watches those, and preventing you from seeing them. But other times it seems to not know what to do with my videos unless I call them that. I don't know what I'll do. I don't know. Anyways, I'll hopefully have more videos for you soon, even if it's just another art gripe, which I know my core audience does like all the same. I will keep making videos. I'm trying my best. Just please bear with me. Thank you guys very much. Bye-bye.